Welcome to Grow the Middle podcast. I'm your host, Mariah Krystal, founder and principal coach of AYC Consulting Group, also known as Authentically You Coaching. Grow the Middle podcast is about real truths of growing successful careers, the good, the bad, the great, and the ugly. Here we're going to talk about navigating imposter syndrome, leaning into discomfort, and learning about roles that aren't always spotlighted or deemed glamorous. Every episode is short, actionable, and designed to give you practical insights, honest stories, and guidance to grow your career with clarity and authenticity. Whether you're aiming for a promotion, pivoting into a new role, or just trying to figure out your next steps, this podcast is where you're going to thrive in spaces that matter the most. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Grow in the Middle. I'm your host, Mariah Krystal, and today I'm sitting down with someone who's been by my side, in my corner for the last 20 years, my brother, my friend, and a powerhouse in his own right, Carl Cellini. Carl's a proud alum from Howard. He's built an incredible career in media, advertisement, and business development, working with some of the biggest names in the industry from ESPN, Disney, and leading strategic partnerships at the trade desk. While he's also on his way to becoming a real estate mogul, the journey hasn't always been easy. Today, we're diving into what it means to be the first to walk your path, the only one navigating uncharted territory while balancing ambition, relationships, and self-doubt. In this episode, we'll cover imposter syndrome, unmasking self-doubt even at the top, fear of success when reaching your goals feels terrifying, and being the only one navigating the spaces where you stand alone. Balancing relationships, juggling careers, friends, and personal growth. Most importantly, today we're talking about the value of quality friendships, the people who walk with you through it all, who challenge you and remind you of who you are and where you got started. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Happy to be
Absolutely.
here.
Yes, I'm very, very happy to be here. The thing that is really important to me about today is um, it is very apparent that a lot of people don't have quality friendships. What I mean to say, and what I mean by that is, as you know, a lot of us have learned through our friends, through seeing other people in our community do stuff, and not necessarily like line by line from our parents, right? We're going a different path from what they've traditionally done, and when you don't have that community and when you don't have that friendship, sometimes it makes the journey a little lonely. So I'm really excited to have you on today because whether you know it or not, I have been watching you. We graduated at the same time, Aggie and, a Bison here.
Bison. Yup. You know
But
it.
we graduated at the same time, and I have been watching you and your career and your personal journey, and I tell you all the time, it is very inspiring to me. And
Appreciate
I'm
that.
truly thankful to have such a great friend and a great brother. And I'd be like, oh, I'm always inspired by everything that you're doing. So I would love
Appreciate
it
that.
if you kind of walk us through your journey post college into now. Just kind of tell the audience a little bit about what you've been doing.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate the kind words. It's definitely a blessing to have 20 plus year friendships, and it's definitely been a blessing to see your trajectory in life and go through that together. But yeah, I'm happy to kind of give a little bit of background on my career journey. So after I graduated from Howard, I came back home, came back to Brooklyn. I was doing an internship through this foundation called IRTS, stands for International Radio Television Society. They place students of color into high priority internships. I was fortunate enough to get a internship at ABC national television sales. So I knew that I wanted to do some form of media sales coming out of school. So I was really fortunate to get into that program. I was able to turn that summer internship into a full-time role at Disney Channel. I had I essentially started my media career within the House of the Mouse. I stayed there for, I want to say, roughly 3.5, almost 4 years. Worked my way throughout the building. Went from working at Disney Channel to ESPN, where I was on a sales planner, right? So still within the sales team, really more of a sales support role. But after about 3.5 years, I decided that I wanted to kind of get back to my roots of Howard a little bit. So transition back into the Black media space. I was doing multi-platform sales for a company called Radio One, which is a lot more than just radio. So they essentially own a variety of different media platforms across local radio, national radio, TV One, and they at the time had a few different internet properties under the umbrella I1 Digital. So I was part of a team, a first time team that was there to do multi-platform sales across their media portfolio. I did that for a number of years. Then I transitioned into more of the ad tech space. I was selling B2B data. And then I currently work for a ad tech firm that is focused in an area of advertising called programmatic advertising. Essentially, programmatic advertising is a technology and a platform where major brands log into our platform every day to serve media in an omni-channel fashion. Omni-channel being a variety of different channels, right? So our platform allows you to send ads to people's televisions, your phone, your laptop, digital billboards that you might see out in the street. And the difference is that we are using algorithms and data to inform who we send those ads to. So that is what I currently do. I've been in my current role for about coming up on 7 years actually this year.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. It's been a
That's
ride.
Yeah, it no, you look at
Yeah.
how much you've done. Um, I think that that's really interesting because coming out of college, I think the first I was in the same role for like 6 years. And I tell the story a lot around like me staying way too long and not knowing at the time, like knowing something was wrong. And I'm watching like I don't know if you know this, but I always talk about you because I'll be like, he done moved like 2 3 times, right? And I'm like, why are you still in this space?
Yeah.
And then when I started to like make the jump, and it's like, oh wow, like understanding that you have to move to grow, and you can hear the growth in your roles as you're talking about them, right? And if I'm not mistaken, you didn't leave roles because you didn't want to be there anymore. You left because of just better opportunity for some of them.
For some of them,
Some
there were definitely roles that I left because I felt like I was owed that next jump. Perhaps I
Mhm,
felt underappreciated. Perhaps it was a learning opportunity. So
mhm,
I've had situations where I've removed myself from a role in
mhm,
pursuit of something else, and I've had situations where I had great mentors who forced me to leave and said, you need to go focus on this now. It's not that you're not doing a good job here. It's that I see something more for you, and you need that push to go. So it's definitely been a diverse set of reasons as to
mhm.
why I've made some of these moves. But I can say that with full certainty that any of the moves that I've ever made, I never felt like it was a bulletproof decision. Like it was
Mm.
certain that this was a good idea for me to do. Some of these decisions were ones where I really leaped out on faith, and through the grace of God, thus far it's panned out.
I love that. So can we talk a little bit about um because I think a lot of people struggle with, is this the right move? And to your point, they want to feel like, okay, this is 100% right, and most times you'll almost never feel that way. It's always going to be something. So what were some of the things that pushed you to leap out on faith? I'm hearing having a mentor, I'm hearing like feeling underappreciated, but what are some other things that you probably were thinking through?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think that the decision making process for everyone is going to look a little bit different as you are trying to discern whether or not you should or should not make a move. But for me, in particular, being in a sales role, some of the things that I look at is, well, if I stay within this organization, what is the likelihood that I'm going to be selling the same product year after year after year?
Mm,
If I move to this other place, am I giving myself an opportunity to learn and grow my skill set? Do I have new things that I'll be able to go out into market and talk about that I think are going to be received well by the marketplace? So it's a mix of what's the sales opportunity, what's the learning opportunity for me, and I would almost bias more towards that learning opportunity. I think a lot of the moves that I have made and I've been fortunate to not have to make a move. I'm very happy at where I am today, for almost 7 years now, because they continue to give me an opportunity to learn. My day is never the same week over week. I'm never talking about the same repetitive things to clients. There's such a diverse a set of products and knowledge base that I get to tap into within my current role, that it keeps me hungry and active and happy, and not needing to think I need to go pursue the next role. I would encourage anybody who's thinking about, moving careers or moving jobs or whatever, to really think about what that learning opportunity is for you, and
Mhm.
don't just think about that next move. Think about 3 moves ahead of that, right? So if I go here, what does my next 5 years look like? What does my next 10 years look like? Right? It's not always about money. We all love money. Trust me, I love money than most. I'm going to be very clear and honest about that. But, I've had situations in my career where people offered me more money to go somewhere, and I didn't necessarily go because I thought I had a better opportunity within my current placement. So it's a mixed decision making bag for sure.
Yeah. No, you pointed out some really good things. I think that that's really important. The key thing is like, what does the next 5, 10 years look like? A lot of people aren't thinking in that way. They're
Yep.
either thinking way too long term or just way too short term, in the sense of
For
just
sure.
like, okay, you know what, this is going to get me. I'll give you an example. I coach candidates at a nonprofit, and I had this one candidate. He's got this opportunity that would change his he would be transitioning into tech. He already has a leg up because he knows the insurance industry.
Mm.
And they had told him, like, hey, we can offer you 70 to start. We're also going to give you equity. We're switching fully to remote. So all of his opportunities and all of the things that like bug him, he's now getting those things. But it's like
Mm.
I think it was like $5,000. I think it was either the same or $5,000 less. And I was
Mm.
just like, okay. But they're like, hey, if you start here, your trajectory is just up.
Yeah.
So he was like, I don't know if I should take it. And I'm like, well, how do we measure out like what's important to you now? Because he was like, well, I really wanted $10,000 more. I think it was the same amount. I don't think he was taking a pay cut. I think it was like the same amount. And he was like, I really want
Mm.
$10,000 more. And I was like, well, you look at $10,000 in a paycheck versus what you're getting. You no longer have to drive to work anymore, which is a big thing for you. They're allowing you to move to the state that you want. All of these things are coming into play.
Yeah.
$10,000 is not enough of a bag for you to risk all of these freedoms and opportunities.
It's so funny you say that, because you said $10,000, and then immediately my mind went to, okay, well, really that's like 6,800 after taxes. I'm gonna foresee his tax bracket being somewhere between 27 and 32%. So really, we talking about $6,800, and then to your point, you're factoring in what the commute is, how much money has to go towards that commute. Is it fully work from home? Is it hybrid? Well, if it's hybrid, how much money am I spending on lunch every week? So you know $10,000 really isn't $10,000, and I think we as people have to be a little bit more um, dialed in into our discernment to really understand those little nuances when we're trying to make calls like that.
Yes, that's so true. Because it's not. I was like, honey, this is gonna be pennies when you're done. I promise you, you're
Yeah.
not gonna see it. And
Right.
one of the things like to know, which is why I think community and sharing information. Because a
Mm.
while back, when I was having a similar conversation, they were like, just ask for it in a bonus, ask for it up front.
Mm.
They're more
Yeah.
likely to give it to you up front than they are to give it to you in your salary if you're asking for $10,000. And I'm like,
Right.
no one's told me that before. So, like
Yeah.
back then, so understanding, I've had people negotiate with me as their manager, as their hiring manager, like, hey, if you can't give me more money, give me a check up front. Go
Mm.
back to HR. They're like, all right, fine.
Yeah. I mean, you'll be amazed to see some of the things that you can negotiate for, but it's like that old adage, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So if you're not asking, nobody's going to outwardly put themselves in a position, especially as an organization, to negotiate on your behalf, right? So
Right.
you got to be willing to make those asks.
Yeah. No, I think that that's huge. I do want you to share a little bit about how you got into real estate,
Mhm.
and like the journey so far.
Yeah. So I'll start with kind of talking a little bit about my childhood a little bit. So, my parents immigrated to Brooklyn, New York in like the mid 80s. My parents are from what is arguably the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, being Haiti. And so, growing up, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother who never learned how to fully speak English. So I was able to pick up my Creole from her. And in us being able to communicate like that, I came to understand a lot about like what her life had been like in Haiti. And my grandmother's a very interesting woman because if you meet my grandmother, she talks about her houses all the time. That is what my grandmother will talk to you about, her houses. My grandmother built, I would say, a very a nominal, I don't want to say nominal, a modest portfolio for herself in Haiti as it relates to homes. And she was sort of renting out her properties to people. She had a well in one of her countryside homes where she was selling water. So, it's very interesting that when you're younger and you're hearing these things, you don't understand the effect that it's going to have on you later on in life, right? So I take that piece and then I take the piece about my mother, very strong woman, very entrepreneurial in her spirit. She's a 30 plus year veteran in the pharmaceutical industry. She's a pharmacist. When I was growing up, she had a pharmacy in our neighborhood, in my family's neighborhood in Flatbush. And I used to sit in her pharmacies all summer, right? Like it would be her way of keeping me from going outside a little bit. She would make me just sit in her pharmacy. And again, hated that when I was growing up. But you then realize as you get older, wow, well, what did I see? I saw my mother, a strong Black woman running her own business. And so I take these little parts of me as I grow up and I start to just understand that I have a mind for business. I want to be able to generate my own revenue. And so as I grew up, I tried to figure out how I could potentially do that. Fast forward, my mother was getting divorced in 2014. She needed help buying a house. I was like, I don't want any parts of this, to be honest with you. I was like, I really don't want to be involved in this, but I love you. Let me see if I can help you figure this out. Uh, the best thing that ever happened to me because in 2014, I started to understand the complete process of what it takes to be able to qualify and close on a home.
Mhm.
And I did that process and I became very curious after the fact. Well, what happens if I keep this going, right? Like, let's see if I could find some other properties and build up some long-term rental situations, and then eventually got into the short-term rental game. So it's been a blessing, and it's been something that I've been able to learn a lot from, and not just when it comes to being able to buy homes, like I never envisioned myself as being like a hands-on guy. Like I really enjoy doing work in my own homes now, like basic plumbing jobs, basic electrical stuff. Like those have been sort of the additional fruits that have come from being so involved in like the real estate stuff, is that I've been able to like really learn how to different skills that I never really thought that I would be open to learning or being able to understand. And so it's kind of like the gift that just keeps giving. I've been able to scale up the portfolio over a number of years with myself and my partner. We've been doing this for, I mean, I guess going on 11 years now. We
Wow.
have roughly 13 doors right now, and we're just continuing to try to expand. So, yeah.
I'm so proud of you. So
Yeah,
proud of
thank you.
you.
Appreciate it.
I
Appreciate it.
love that. I want to
Yeah.
talk a little bit. I want to jump back into the idea of autonomy, because
Hmm.
what I'm hearing is that you have a lot more autonomy that allows you to build a life outside of work. And
Hmm.
so, tell me a little bit more about uh or what if I guess what advice would you give to people when they're looking for companies and freedom so that you can build outside of just your day to day?
Yeah. Well, first of all, what I would say is that that autonomy, that freedom that you're talking about, that's not given, that's earned, right? I've been somewhere for coming up on 7 years where, for the most part, if you walk into that building and you talk to, my manager or people who work with me, they will tell you that when I am at work, I am fully present at work. I am giving that 200%. There's no, hey, let me go see if I could sneak this in with my house stuff during. No, that doesn't exist. They pay me a very fair wage to do a very specific job, and I am going to execute on that job to the best of my ability and as perfectly as possible as I can, right? So, with that being said, I think that when I started my current role, I was petrified. I was very green in the advertising technology space. I didn't really know much, and I was so fearful of being let go because I just didn't think that I was going to be able. I didn't think I was smart enough for the job. I didn't think I was capable of executing on the job. But I had a manager who's still my current manager today, through the grace of God, who saw how hard I was working, and she just told me, "You gotta chill. Like you are putting way too much pressure on yourself. You're doing too much, right? Take a step back, figure out how to organize it, figure out how to do it within the time frame of the day in which I expect you to be at work. I don't expect you to be working at 9 o'clock, right?
Mhm.
Like she didn't want that for me, but I was doing that for myself because I was so worried about fumbling the bag. I was worried about not being able to live up to uh, the standards of working within this organization. So I was kind of killing myself within those first few months to try to get it. Um, and you know what? Sometimes that's necessary, right? Like I was treating that job like college initially. Like I was studying nights and weekends. So I say all that to say, like, I didn't always have that freedom. That freedom of time that you had referenced, that comes from experience. That comes from putting in the time and effort to warrant you having this autonomy, warrant you having that freedom, right? Because my manager is never sitting around questioning what I'm doing during the day. Like she knows that I'm going to be getting to it no matter what. So yeah, it's the experience, I would say.
No, I love that. I think that that's
Yeah.
absolutely true. You have to earn it. You have to build it. It's a part of your
Yeah.
reputation because people come in and they're like, I know the quality of work this person is going to do. People even know when you're off. They're like, yo, you all right today? Do you need a minute?
Yeah.
And the blessing of having a manager who's dialed into, your progress and your growth and being able to be a champion for you and be like, yo, take a minute, here's what I'm expecting for you, because not everybody gets that. So I think that
Yeah.
that is so important. Some people are having a similar journey to you, but they don't have the right person who is managing or leading them. And then they also
Yeah.
may not have community. So if that sounds like you, and talking to the audience, if that sounds like you might want to make sure that you're tapped into the right people, into the right community where someone can really understand how to guide you and how to help you, because you don't have to
Yeah.
do it alone. So I think that's really important.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. All right, so we've gotten the career down. We've talking about the houses and your journey. We've talked about the autonomy and like all the little lessons that you're learning as you're growing and as you're building. Um, now in your 30s, right? Where like you're in the
Hmm.
you're I still think you're very senior, but you're still in the middle of your career. You still have a lot to achieve should you want to, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of growth for you still available. And then also
Right.
with life, right? Tell me a little bit about like how you're, I don't like to say balancing, but harmonizing all of the things that you've kind of talked about.
Yeah. It's a great question, and I think it's been a very up and down journey for me in the sense that sometimes you think you want all these things and then you get them and then you realize, well, this is a lot, right? And I think, again, the old adage goes, you can't complain about having a heavy plate if the goal is to eat. I think it's something like
Yes.
that, to that effect, right? um
Hmm.
and then also it's like it's a blessing to even have some of the problems that I have, right? So I've been trying to elevate my frame of thinking when it comes to some of the hardships that come with juggling all that I try to juggle. Because the opposite side of it is having none of those things, and then you don't have any of those problems, right? And I think sometimes when people go through hardships, it's like, oh, why is this happening to me? It's all piling in at once, and again, like you ask for these things, right? You chase this.
Hmm.
The flip side of being an ambitious person is that with that ambition is gonna naturally come some ups and downs. Like I've dealt with some really, really difficult things in my career, in real estate. Like I've I've seen some stuff, right? And I've gone through some stuff, but I'm still here. I'm still going. I'm still thriving through the grace of God. Like, so,
Mhm.
in the moment, these things feel like the end of the world, but I promise you, rarely is it that. Rarely it's that you're having a bad set of circumstances. And I think your ability to problem solve is usually what is going to separate those from who can continue down their journey and continue to find the wins and keep going versus those who don't. Some people just fold and say, "Oh, this is too much. I don't want to deal with this. Let me hang it
Mhm.
up."
Mhm.
uh, you know, Jay-Z said the only difference between me and them is I never stopped trying. Like I kept going, right? So
Mhm.
that I can't underscore that enough. Like if you just keep going
Mhm.
and find a way to get past whatever the hardships are, and I'm not telling you that you're gonna walk away from those hardships unscathed. Rarely do you walk away unscathed in full, to be fully honest. You're gonna take some battle wounds.
Some
But
hits.
what did you learn from those hits, right? Because when somebody tries to swing that way at you again, or when life swings at you again, you now have a knowledge base to respond from. So
Mhm.
look at it that way. Look at it as lessons. Look at it as having gratitude for the fact that you even have some of the problems that you have.
Yeah. No, that I think a lot of people suffer to your point. They get knocked down and they get knocked down multiple times and they're just like, this is it. Like this just keeps
Mm,
happening to me, to your point, instead of problem solving. I talked about this in the last episode, where this guy had told a really funny story about like he wanted to do an acting gig. They like canceled everybody because they thought he was like the best. They were gonna pay him $500 that day, and he was like, "But I gotta go to work." He's like, "I've never called out from work ever." And he was like,
mm,
wanted to be an actor. I wanted to pursue this." And he was just like, "I didn't go because I was like, I'm gonna get fired from work." And I was just like,
mm.
"Well, if you've never called out from work ever, like model citizen right now, why would they
Mm.
fire you?" Like in that moment when fear starts to take over, you have to problem solve. If you
Yeah,
don't problem solve, you will be stuck there. And that is what's happening to a lot of people on their journeys. They're not problem solving. And it happens to the best of us, right? Like it happens to
yeah,
all of us, myself included. You're letting fear take over where you are, and you're not solutioning, you're not being forward thinking, so that, like you said, you will eventually come out of this, and you'll come out of it with essentially a blueprint. Like, yo, I did this wrong, or this was, I'm not getting knocked down. Here's how I get up the next time. Here's how I move
yeah,
forward. So I
yeah.
think that that's really important.
And also, let me just say that I would never stand up here and try to minimalize some of the struggles that people go through because some of the struggles people go through are beyond anything that has happened to me or you. And some of those struggles are ones that maybe you can't get up from this, right? And the hope is that you can, but again, like even through your struggles, what are the brighter points that I can take away from it, right? And I think
Mhm.
that if you lean on that more than anything, hopefully that helps you get through.
Yeah, no, I think that
Yeah.
that's really important. It made me think about a conversation you and I had a couple of weeks ago. I was just telling you like all the stuff that was going on. You was like,
Mm,
I'm so I'm proud of you that you're dealing with all that, you're like, you keep getting through all this, but damn, like you
mm,
shouldn't have to. And I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, that's like that like weird feeling of like shit just keeps happening to you or just happening around you.
yeah,
And that like almost, to your point, like people deal with a lot of stuff, but that almost that feeling where it's just like, yo, God, ease up.
yeah,
Chill out. Like I can't take much more of this. But then for me, it's always, if I stay here, I'm stuck. Like
mm,
it's just that simple. Like it may take me a little while to get out of it, but if I stay here, I'm stuck. And I'm like, for people who are going through really heavy things and suffering mentally, physically, all of those different things, it's
mm,
literally, if you stay here, you're stuck.
mm,
That's the reality of it. Regardless of what your situation is, if you don't start to plan to figure out like, okay, I want this one thing to be better in the next couple of
yeah,
months, days, weeks, years. What's the plan to get there? Or
Yeah.
the alternative is if I stay here, I'm stuck.
Yeah. And I think some of what you're saying ladders up to this idea for me personally that your mind has to be stronger than your emotions, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're going through things, it is inherently human for you to feel that and be emotional behind that. But one of the things that I have tried the hardest in my life to do is not let emotions drive me, right? Because
Hmm.
that's what takes you away from problem solving. I've seen people in my life do things based off of emotion, and rarely did that situation pan out the way it should have for them because they're leading with emotion.
Hmm.
And, you know, you got to be able to discern and just kind of put that away for a second and say, okay, what am I not going to do based off of emotion? And I'm going to let my mind drive me to the best possible outcomes and decisions to get to those outcomes as possible.
Yeah. There's a saying, the higher the level of emotion, the lower the level of reasoning. And then the
Mm,
flip side of that is the higher the level of reasoning, the lower the level of emotion. And there's
mm,
balance in that because to your point, if you're going through something really difficult, sometimes you need more reasoning than you do emotion, depending on the situation. And then there are other times, especially as we're dealing with relationships and people, all types of relationships, whether they're romantic, whether they're family, whether they're work relationships. Sometimes it's just like, what do you require here? Is this a situation that requires a lot more reasoning, or is this a situation where I need to pull in some empathy and like
mm.
balance out? But you have to assess where you are in order to do that. So I
Yeah.
think that's really important. And I think that that is a big driver. Um, I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned earlier about like essentially imposter syndrome, because you mentioned that you didn't feel like you were, what did you say? You said you didn't feel like you were qualified to do the job. You were super green.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and I want to start by saying, for most people, I was told this years ago. When that whatever job you get, you're never really qualified to do the job when you first start, because
Mm,
if you were fully qualified to do the job, you're overqualified.
right.
No CEO, no CRO, no director,
Mm,
their first time doing it is they're super qualified, right? Like you're qualified to take the challenge, but you're not going to be like, "Oh, 100%." So,
mm.
I think that that's something that people should think about. Like you should have the skill set to do the role, which you obviously did. So why the imposter syndrome, or why the struggle?
Yeah. So, it was a lot of different things for me, but like, I would say it kind of, it, it boiled off to a couple of things, right? So I was in a situation where the role that I had now, I had a really good former manager, really good mentor, really good friend who kind of got me to say, hey, like you need to pay attention to this next company. I think you should work here. Go do it, right?
Mhm.
I said no at first. I was like, I'm good where I'm at. The money's coming in how I need it to come in. Like I really don't need to go do what it is that you asking me to do. But because it's you asking me, I'll take a look, right? And so I finally wrapped my head around it and said, this seems like a good opportunity. Let me go do that. Anytime I'm doing something personally that is kind of backed off of somebody's name or somebody else's reputation, I feel is at stake. I want to make sure that I do it to like the best of my ability and I don't make anybody feel or look crazy for walking me through a door, right? So that was one thing. The other thing, in full transparency, is this was the first time I was really making substantial money in my life. And it was like, man, like I'm putting all this pressure on myself because I'm like, I don't want to lose this money. And I don't know what I'm going to do if I lose this money. Like, how do I not lose this money? And then, I'm looking around and I'm looking, across the colleagues who are in these roles similar to me and they're seasoned. Like, they've had the opportunity to kind of pick up a knowledge base that's required for this role prior, to being in the role at this company. And I didn't think that there would be an opportunity for me to get around that learning curve. It was a significant learning curve. And
Mm,
I do a lot of like new hire forums in my current role because I think this is an important story and one that I'm fully like cognizant of when I tell people onboarding in my organization is it's difficult. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of moving pieces, and I'm always upfront with people and tell people I was very green. I was going to quit this job 8 months in because I didn't think I was smart enough to work here. But I say all that to say it's super possible, right? I went from being super green to being one of the more technical sellers at my current organization. I'm not saying the most technical. I'm sure there's people doing things extremely far beyond what I'm doing, but
Brag
to
on
think about
yourself.
where I started to like where I am now, it's kind of incredible. And I think it's about giving yourself the grace to give yourself the time and grace to say, I can figure this out.
Yeah.
I don't think I was giving myself the time or the grace to figure it out initially when I was suffering from a lot of that imposter syndrome.
No, I like that. I think that that's helpful, and also brag on
Yeah,
yourself because this is about you,
yeah.
and it's not the kind of it is an incredible story, and it is
Mm,
something that is super helpful and to lock into because you felt that way, and like even to know like 8 months in, I was like, damn, I don't know, and then look at where you
yeah.
are now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a blessing. I appreciate it. I am not the bragger of myself. I am so fine being in a corner and nobody knowing anything about me these days. So yeah, that's but I appreciate it for sure.
Yes,
That's love.
you gotta
Yeah.
take your you have to like take your flowers and like
Yeah.
take it in, take all of the stuff that you've been able to do in because I think that it's really important.
Mhm.
Um sometimes and I don't think this is a thing for you because you're so ambitious, but sometimes humility, too much humility is crippling for people.
Mm.
So again, not for you, but I think in general sometimes people are just like, well, we did this and I didn't really do it or I kind of did it instead of like, no,
Yeah.
this is something that you did. And I think that speaking to people who are looking to get promotions, looking to transition in their roles, and all of those things. Sometimes,
Yeah.
if you're too humble, you're unable to articulate the skill set that you have because you're
Yeah.
always like we, and like, what were you doing? Like, why do you
100%.
want to take over this role? So I think that that is really important to
Mm.
talk about.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think you're right. And I think I'm really a humble person by nature. That is absolutely kind of like where I lay my hat on this idea of humbleness and understanding that what you have today can be gone tomorrow. Like, this is all God's work and this is truly me leaning into God and leaning into faith. But on the other hand, I can also be unreasonably ambitious. I could be unreasonably confident sometimes too. And I think that confidence has carried me through to different levels. So I think you're right. You can't dim your own light. You got to be able to understand how to balance the scales of being humble, but also having confidence to kind of push you through those doors that you're trying to get through.
Yeah, even if it's a little delusional, that's like
Yeah.
you got a dream, right? You can't like a lot of things. I don't know, like maybe where you are now might have been delusional to you 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's funny. I remember you and I were in Austin together. Was this last year? Maybe this
Uh,
was like 2 years. Was
two
this two
years
years
ago,
ago
yeah.
for Afrotech? We were in a car and you were like, Carl, sometimes you be walking around like you 6'5". Like, I don't understand why you act this way, but I'm not 6'5". I could definitely tell y'all I'm not 6'5", but I will sometimes carry myself that way. And I don't have a problem carrying myself that way because I believe in myself that much.
You have
Yeah.
you have that you do have that energy and
Yeah.
I I remember.
Sometimes that energy has been for the wrong reasons, but I've matured since then. So I'm not that anymore. I don't think.
No, 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 no. But I think that that is that you do carry a confidence about yourself, and you are very humble. And I think that like being able to balance the two is super super important. Um, the last thing I want to touch on is really there's two things. There's two things that I want to touch on. You are success wise, right? We talked about like not wanting to lose like money and like what's driving you to be successful, to be ambitious, to be so
Mhm.
hungry. How are you feeling now? With your level of success, are you feeling like I'm like kind of coasting or do you still have like huge ambitions?
No, I still have huge ambitions. I don't even think I am a quarter of the way done to where I'm trying to go. I think part of me being unreasonable with myself sometimes is not taking a step back to look at what you've accomplished thus far and really having an appreciation for that. So
Mhm.
I am trying to be a bit better about that, but I am far from where I'm trying to go. And I think that is okay. I think, again, through the grace of God, it's been great thus far. But I think there's so much more to be accomplished, and I think that all requires patience. I think it requires strategic thinking, and I think it requires having the right people around you to keep you going and to keep you energized and with a fresh mind of ideas, with like-minded folks around you will continue to push you to kind of get to where you want to go. But I'm happy, but I'm not satisfied for sure.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that a lot. How does your friendships and your communities play into either keeping you balanced or like pushing you
Mhm.
along to your goals? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. Plays a huge part. I can't underscore enough how important it is to have the right people around you. I've been blessed in that I have friendships with people like you and our friendship group where we've known each other since we were like 12 years old, right? So,
Mhm.
there's an aspect of being able to have healthy relationships with people you've known since childhood who can humble you, right? And keep you honest to who they know you to be. And maybe you need
Mhm.
a reminder of who you are, right? So that's part of it. But I think that from a career perspective, I've been so blessed to come across a lot of really good brothers very early on in my career who kind of put their arm around me and said, we're going to teach you the way of the road. We're going to teach you how to conduct yourself, and command that respect in the place of business. And these are brothers who, I'm talking about like senior vice presidents at Disney or NBCU. They're like CROs, right? So we have this a group of brothers called Brothers of the Industry, primarily based here in New York. It's about 100 and plus brothers. We try to get together quarterly, happy hours, just to have that fellowship and be able to learn and grow and be in a space with each other. And I think it all keeps us motivated to kind of continue to ascend, but making sure that we're bringing that elevator back down for some of the younger brothers that are coming up behind us to make sure that they're ascending with us as well. So that's community, that friendship and that sort of circle of brothers has been an amazing thing to be a part of my journey, and I think has a lot to do with sort of where I find myself today. So I think, again, having the right people around you is just critical. It's critical. And I think when I think about some of the younger brothers coming up today, and sort of in environments and in communities that are suffering, the biggest piece of advice that I look to give them is, and this is nothing new. Our parents have been saying this forever. Don't follow people. Like, do not follow people. I can't underscore that enough. Just because your friends are out in the street doing whatever, like, you can still be friends with them. I'm not even telling you can't be friends with them, but you don't necessarily have to do the things that they're doing. Like, it doesn't have to be done. And I think like that is the one thing that I can consistently say about myself from the time that you met me to now. I don't follow people. It's never been a thing of mine. And I don't know if that has to do with having Haitian parents, because Haitian parents like are very like they're very strong-willed about that. The idea of you following people will lead to your demise. I don't follow people. I've had friends forever who I love. I can hang out with you, but I could go to a bar by myself. I could do things by myself. I don't have to do things in the midst of other people. I love my friends and I will always love my friends, but I'm such an individual to my core. I don't do the trends. I'm not wearing bell bottom jeans right now because every other guy is well bell bottom jeans. I don't like that. I don't think that's fly. That's not me, and I'm never following people. It's just not what I do, and I
I
feel really good about saying that
No,
for
that's
sure.
so it's so I think that that touches on like there's so many things that touches on following people, following your own path. There's one thing to be inspired by something or to be interested in something, but it's just like
Yeah,
make your own way, be okay with who you are, learn who you are. Even going back to the saying about your parents or all of our parents, right?
yeah,
My mom and dad taught me that young, and when people would do stuff, I'd be like, somebody got to live to tell a story. So when y'all go out and do that, I'm gonna be
yeah,
able to be the one to say this is what they did because I'm not going with you. Oh, if your friend jump off a bridge, would you jump too? Absolutely not. So who gonna call
Yeah.
the cops? Who gonna call the rescue team? I'm not. No, no. And
Yeah.
the problem with a lot of people is that they're just, and I mean this with love, like, is that they're just kind of like floating through and like following the footsteps of their families, their friends, and not really having an understanding of what they want to do even when they're successful. I've met tons of
Mm,
people who are like at the highest of their careers and they're miserable because they followed their families or their siblings and like this is what they were
mm.
going to do. And so I'm going to do the same thing, but this is not where my passion lies.
Yeah.
Had I, right?
Yeah, and I didn't mean to interject, but I think I'm talking about following people from the perspective of friends, but that's equally important in family, right? Like my mother had this grand vision for me that I was going to be a doctor, and I spent like the first years of my college career studying biology. I made it all the way up to physics, and I was like, this is not for me. Like this is not really what I'm trying to do. Sure, could I get through it? But I'm going to get through it, then what, go to medical school and have $200,000 of additional debt. The math just wasn't mathing for me. And I was like, I'm not
Mhm.
doing this. And
Right.
I tried it out. I gave myself a chance and I was like, maybe this could be a thing. But ultimately I was like, no, I don't want to be in the medical field like every Haitian person in America, which is great. I think that's admirable. But like,
Right.
I think that's amazing. I have many nurses and doctors in my family. I think that's great for them. But for me, no, it's not. That's not my thing.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
listen, if I had, my whole family is a correction officers, literally all of them,
Yeah.
correction officers, law enforcement in the courthouses. So had I followed, my mom used to be like, you had made a great correction officer. I'm like, she's like, you'd have been a warden. Have you met me? Like, girl, you raised me. You think I want to be in a jail all day with people? You don't know. So to that point, um, going back to like to your point, like not following friends and doing crazy things, changing your community so that there's more that you can be introduced to, but then also having an understanding of who you are. Like if you don't start to really dial into who you are, what you're good at. Me personally, would you have been a great doctor? Probably, but like your personality speaks to influence, speaks to sales, speaks to like go getter. Yeah, you could have done anything, but to your point, like you learned what works for you. And that is where a lot of people are right now trying to figure out like, damn, where are my next steps? So I would give that
Yeah,
advice for sure. But yes.
100%.
So if you had one piece of advice to give to people that's like heavy on your heart, you dropped a few gems. What's one more piece of advice you would give to people who are in the middle of their career right now, in the middle of their lives, and just trying to figure out like where their next steps are? What would you say to them?
Be patient with yourself. I think that is the most important thing you can do, and the kindest thing I think that you can do for yourself is be patient. I think there's a lot of points in my career where I wasn't being patient and I felt like this thing had to happen for me now. And it turns out it didn't have to happen for me now. And everything still panned out through the grace of God that, that well. So just be patient with yourself and never stop learning. Just keep learning. Like sometimes people get to this point in their career where they've been doing the same thing for 5 years, and then you look up, it's been 15 years, you're still doing the same thing. You didn't really give yourself an opportunity to pick up additional skills. And that doesn't necessarily always mean going back to school, right? That means
Right.
staying curious within your work environments, having conversations with people outside of your day to day a network of colleagues. Keep being curious, because that curiosity will push you through to new levels that you probably didn't even imagine would be applicable to you. So be patient and kind to yourself and stay curious.
I love that. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. I truly
no
enjoyed the
doubt.
conversation. Is there any place that you want people to follow you? And I'll cut this out if you don't, but is there any place?
Nah, I'm not
Okay,
a follow me kind of guy. Like,
that's
if you
fine.
know me in real life, you know me in real life. So I hope to meet any of your audience in real life.
All right, oh well, I'll
Yeah,
put that up.
yeah, yeah. You can
No, and
leave
that's
that too.
fine.
I think that's honest. Like, yeah,
You want me to leave
but yeah,
it?
yeah, leave it.
All right, I'll leave it.
Yeah,
Oh wait, let me
if it makes
see.
sense, I'll give you creative control to do your
Yeah,
thing.
no, no,
Yeah,
no. I think that makes sense. I think normal people. One of the things that I struggle with right now is like I
Hmm.
don't want to create content. Like I
Yeah.
just want to get on here and give messages and talk to people
Hmm.
and help people, but I'm not a content creator. And so like sometimes it feels like they're like people need to get to know you, and I'm like, yeah, if you know me personally, if you know my Instagram, what you see, me, my dog,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you
I feel.
occasionally see my husband. Those three
Yeah.
things in cycles. But I'm not like a like, ooh, yay, come. You're not gonna see it. Get ready with me. We're not doing like those are things that I'm just like, ugh. So I'm trying to find. It's funny you say that because I am trying to find a space in building this community
Hmm.
without like, I don't want to be a content creator. I want to provide and build community, and so
Yeah.
it's funny that I like
That's
that.
dope. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's dope. I mean, everybody's different. And listen, you might find that doing what you're doing just is naturally going to create community without you having to like force it or do any other things that you don't want to do. So just do it your way and it'll come through.
Yeah. So thank
Yeah,
you so much for coming on. I appreciate
no
it.
doubt.
And for the audience, if you found this episode helpful, please like, subscribe, share with a friend, leave any comments if you have questions. Until the next time, thanks. Thanks for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, share with a friend, comment below. The Growing the Middle podcast is produced and edited by Mid Century Marketing Company. We aim to create engaging and relatable content that helps you chart your own path to growing the middle. I want to thank our wonderful guests and especially you, the listener. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to let us know. Until next time.